This is Ruckus bringing again with another Devo 10 demo. Um, Basically, I have never showed you guys how to do delta mixing, and I showed you on a different radio. There was a Walkera 2800 Pro, but never on the Devo 10. So I wanted to share this with you guys. I don't have the plane hooked up right now, so I'm gonna go and just discuss this. I hope the light's not glaring this too bad here. So here we go. Basically, it's all about the mixes. We talked about this before, and if you remember in one of my other videos, you're gonna separate these servos here. So the way I did it was, it doesn't matter. You can choose which way you want to go. It's up to you. Because other radios, it actually does matter, because you have to physically reverse everything and then electronically reverse it. But this software is much more user friendly. You could put the elevator servo on the right or elevator servo on the left. It doesn't really matter. I just chose to go with elevator servo on the right. So anytime in this software, anytime you're dealing with that specific servo, you're going to set up that servo pretty much for everything you want it to do, okay, individually. So if this is a delta mix type of setup, this particular stab is going to act as an elevator, which will be this right stick right here, up and down, right? That's going to be your elevator. That's going to move this thing up and down. And then you also want it to act as an aileron, which will be left and right. Okay, so obviously when you go left, this elevator will go down to give you more lift to roll left, and then if you want to roll right, it'll go up to take away lift, and so forth. So here we go. So you're going to go to your channel. I have it reversed here because obviously when I was pulling back, it was going the other way, so I just reversed it. And you just do that by going to the channel itself, and then you hit reversed, and you just put enter in it, and it works. Okay, so now it's going to be a complex type mix. Go to complex, and I got 5 mixes here. Okay, it looks like a lot, but it really isn't. The first 2 mixes are going to be your elevator curves. So your first page, okay, or your first mix, is, I have it set to right now, elevator dual rate switch is going to be in 0, and then it's a replacement mux, and then the source is the elevator. Remember, the source is always where you're coming from, what you want to move, and then the curve is 1 to 1, and then my scale is only 50. So I did that because these things move so crazy, because I have this direct drive hooked right to the servo. There's no movement loss in that type of a servo setup. So there's an advantage to that. You could really play around with your movements, but the disadvantage is obviously your trim is going to suffer a little bit. You don't have as much fine control of the trim, you know, because you're just popping off the horn and putting it right back on. So that's enough of that. But that's my scale, and no offset, and then also make sure that this trim works. Sometimes they'll be default to trim, but sometimes other mixes won't. So just make sure when you go to that part, you make sure it says trim, and that means it'll work with your trim wheel. And you have to do that for both sides too. So just keep in mind of that. So okay, that was that setup. That was channel, or excuse me, that was mix 1 of just this elevator. Mix 2 is basically just a lower dual rate, or excuse me, is your low rates. So I said everything's the same, except for your scaling. I put it down to 30. So basically when I switch this dual rate switch down to 1, it'll only go 30% now. Okay, and I'll show you these movements later, either in this vid or another vid. I'll have it set up, and I'll show you how crazy these things move. So that's why I toned them down so much. Okay, so those are your first 2 mixes. Now your third mix is going to be the aileron side. So the aileron side, I have dual rate in 0, okay, and then I have this source is going to be aileron now. So now when I move left and right, it's going to move this thing left and right, or move it up and down according to which way I want to go. And you're going to be messing with the curve, which way you want to go up or down. Okay, scale's 50, no offset. Make sure that trim is there. Okay, because that trim matters all the time. Okay, now you go to the fourth mix is just the lower rate of the ailerons now. Okay, so everything's the same except for aileron DR1 switch. When that's in the down position, that's going to give you only instead of 50%, it's going to be 30% of movement. Okay, and then your trim's there, and then there's one more mix that I didn't really talk about, but mix 5 is actually a rudder mix. I know this is kind of crazy, and I'll have to actually show it later how it works, but I'll just discuss it really quick. I have it set to my gear switch. If my gear switch is in 0, it will set up this rudder, and what happens is, just a brief overview, is it's going to come from my rudder movement here. Okay, and the way I have this plus, or this greater than 0, less than 0, whatever mix or curve here. So basically what happens is, when I hit left rudder, when I hit the right rudder, these flight controls, this one and my aileron, will do opposite, and what that does is it creates drag on this side of the aircraft, and the other side won't do anything. It'll just stay streamlined, and then it should basically act like a rudder, because I don't actually have physical flight control rudders on this plane. So it's just an experiment that I'm going to mess around with, and when I show you the movements, I'll go into that a little bit more details to show you how that works. Okay, and then I'm not going to go through all the other setups because you've seen those before. Basically, you set up the same way you did this. You do the same thing to the other side, except now you're on the aileron side. So when you go to the complex, okay, your page, your mix 1 is your aileron. So basically, if you think of it this way, whatever servo you're on, so this is your elevator servo, that's going to be your first 2 mixes. And then your 3 and your 4 is going to be what else you want it to do. And then the same thing with the aileron. This is primarily aileron servo, or is aileron servo. So your aileron action is going to be your mix 1 and your mix 2, so your high rates and your low rates of aileron. And then 3 and 4 is going to be what this does with the elevator. And that's pretty much it for how you set up your delta. And you can put a switch on there too. That's the cool part. You could actually implement a switch so that your stabs act like ailerons together, or they just act like, well, you don't want to just act like ailerons, but you could actually have it so they just act like elevators, no matter what you do with your aileron, and then you can turn them on or turn them off. But in my experience, when I flew the F16, I flew it just with the tail, and it flew amazingly straight and stable, and that's how you want your first flight to go, so you know if your CG is off or whatnot. So basically I have it set up to where when I push my gear switch down, because there's no actual landing gear on this plane, it's just a fixed gear. When I push my gear switch down, it turns on my ailerons, my wings, and they're actually my flaperons, which if you look at my A10 video, I discussed how to do flaperons, which is it's pretty much the same thing that's going back here, except you got AUX 1 servo and AUX 2 for your wings, and then you just mix them together however you want them. So if you want them to act like aileron, make that one go up for left aileron, and make that one go down for left aileron, and then you switch them around, and it works the same way. And that's pretty much it. I set up a kill switch again for my motor, so when this AUX 5 is all the way down, the motor doesn't come on, and that's it. Pretty simple setup. Straight up, when I take off, these are the only flight controls that are going to be moving, just like a Delta type of setup. And then once I want to, start with my other things. Oh, I have flaps too. Those are flaperons. I actually have flaps involved in there in those mixes too, which I don't have any compensation for flaps yet because I don't know how they react. But once I figure out when those flaps come down, if I get nose down or nose up attitude, these things will react with that. But as of right now, I don't have anything. So if anything goes wrong, I can always switch off my wings and then just use my tail, and then I should be okay. Alright, thanks a lot for watching. Always, like. You don't have to subscribe. Like's always nice, and comment if you want. And if there's any other questions, shoot me a comment. Thanks. Ruckus, bring it out.